This is
Positively Hygiene
with your host, Amber Lovatos,
Amy Prenti, and Angela Doe.
Listen on as we dive into the positive of dental hygiene. Happy Hispanic Heritage Month. Okay, you want to know why Hispanic Heritage Month starts on September 15th and not September 1st? Yes, it is because it lines up with a lot of our Independence Days from Spain. So if you don't know, Spain was one of the conquerors in Latin America and occupied a lot of countries like Costa Rica, El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, Nicaragua, Mexico. So the reason it starts on September 15th to October 15th, it is because a lot of Latin American countries, they fought for their independence and won their independence during this time. So September 16th is Mexico's Independence Day. And then like Nicaragua and Honduras and Guatemala, they're all on like the same day. I can't remember exactly what it is. It's either like the 17th or the 15th. I don't know, but they all kind of like line up and go out throughout the month. Another reason why is because of Columbus Day is during this time as well. And Columbus Day like highlights Columbus, right? Who is a conqueror who, came over. And so they use it as a day of talking about like, the harm that did. Yeah. So that's why it's September 15th through October 15th, because a lot of our Independence Days, our Latin American countries' Independence Days land during that time frame. But it is Hispanic Heritage Month, and I have been poorly celebrating it.
Well, you are doing one thing, right?
I'm doing a couple things, yeah. So I am partnering with Cloud Dentistry, and I'm doing a scholarship, one for a dental student, one for a dental hygienist for $750. If you go to my Instagram, the Latina RDH, you will find it in the link in my bio. Basically, you just give us your information, like your name, email address, what school you go to, and then give me a 1-minute video of like why dentistry, or like how did you get here. We just want to know your story. We don't care about GPA. Really, it's the story that we want to hear about. And we didn't want to make it in writing because for a lot of us first gens, English is not our first language, it's our second language. And so writing is not always like the best for us. It's not our forte. And we can talk though. So we did. So we did a video instead. We don't care about your immigration status either. So if you're a DACA, you can absolutely apply. For those who don't know, DACA or Dreamers are students who are here authorized and they can work and go to school, but their tuition is actually out-of-state tuition and they don't usually qualify for government assistance. And then the other thing is through my organization, Latin RDH, which you're a member of, on the board of it, we're doing a free professional development day on October 15th, 3 to 6 p.m. Central Time. And we're going to have different mini lessons. So one's going to be to dental hygiene educators. Another one's going to be on how to ask for a raise. Another one's going to be on speaking. I think the other one's on public health maybe. So we have a variety of like topics and speakers. We'll be giving away some free stuff. We're giving away some free whitening and oral BIO. And that's completely free. So both things completely free. You don't have to apply. Those are my ways of celebrating Hispanic Heritage Month. Our goal is to you don't have to be Hispanic, Latino, Latiné to attend our event or even to apply for the scholarship. Really, anybody can apply. But the goal is to help increase representation on dental stages and dental magazines and dental hygiene schools in the clinical workforce. But maybe you're a non-Hispanic, Latino, Latina, but you speak Spanish. Maybe I would still give you a scholarship because we need more Spanish speakers. So I'm doing a couple of things, not as much as I would like, but a couple of things.
So yes, I am on the board of Latin RDH.
Yes, thank you.
Because I'm in support. And so you said anyone can apply for these scholarships. Okay. And then you were saying, and excuse my pronunciation, you were saying like Latinx, Latiné, like what are the differences between all those?
So Latino and Hispanic first, okay? Hispanic refers to somebody who comes from a Spanish-speaking country. I come from Mexico, so you would categorize me as Hispanic because I come from a Spanish-speaking country, right? But also, like El Salvador would count, Costa Rica would count, but Brazil wouldn't count because in Brazil they speak Portuguese, but Spain would count because they speak Spanish. Although some people don't like to be referred as Hispanic because they think it's a Eurocentric term and doesn't like prioritize their indigenous heritage. And then Latino or Latina refers to somebody who comes from a Latin American country. So I come from a Latin American country, which is Mexico. So I would be categorized as Hispanic and Latino. But somebody in Spain would not be categorized as Latino because somebody from Spain would not count because Spain is located in Europe. But, Brazil is Latino because they are in Latin America, but they're not Hispanic. Okay, so that's like the two very basic ones. Now, let's talk about Latino, Latina. Latina refers to a female from Latin America. Latinas with an S refers to a group of women from Latin America. Latino refers to a male from Latin America. Latinos refers to a group of people from Latin America or a group of men from Latin America. But sometimes you'll hear things like mi gente latina, my Latina people. That doesn't mean that I am saying all these women. It's just a general term for all my Latin people. But a lot of times you hear it as, Latino people. That does not necessarily mean that we're talking about all males, right? It's talking about like the group of people. Now, with talks about equality, and I give this example a lot. Let's say you have a room of 100 Latinas, 100 women. You're Latinas. And now one man joins you. You are now Latinos. And so it talks about equality. They started doing Latin at, like the at symbol. Well, not everybody identifies as Latino or as male or female. Okay, those are gender specific terms. And so they started crossing out that at with an X. So Latinx to mean a gender neutral pan-ethnic label for people from Latin America. The problem is, I will tell you, I receive hate on social media quite often. But the number one reason is when I use hashtag fluoride. That's like people will come at me in those DMs if I say anything about fluoride. Or if I say Latinx, and I don't even have to use the hashtag Latinx. If I just use Latinx and like anything, people are like, that's not a real thing. I'm not Latinx. And so I can understand part of that because as a Latina and Latino, somebody who identifies that way, somebody who is very strong in her Latinidad and pride in who I am, I don't want this term forced on me, right? Like somebody else telling me, no, you're not Latino, Latina anymore. Now you're Latinx. Well, I don't particularly like that. And that's not, I didn't grow up knowing that term, but now you're telling me that's who I am. And so a lot of people feel like it's a very much an Americanized term, an English term, a term that's being imposed on to people. Now, I still want to be accepting. I still want to be cognizant of the fact that there are people who are non-gender conforming, right? And they deserve to have a term too. So I'm totally okay with people using the term Latinx to identify themselves, and however they want to use it. I personally am not Latinx. I'm Latina or Latino. But the other really big reason people have an issue with Latinx is that's an English term. We don't use X in Spanish. It's more of, and they do in indigenous languages, but not in Spanish. And we speak Spanish mostly. So it doesn't really make sense. In Latin America, they started using the term Latiné with an E because in Spanish we do use E. So also a gender neutral term. I am totally okay actually with using the term Latiné. If somebody says like Latiné, yeah, totally cool. Latiné. I use Latiné a lot. The problem is that a lot of people don't know the term. A lot of people there's like they say only 1 in 4 U.S. Hispanics identifies as Latinx. And I don't remember like what percentage, but like a very low percentage actually knows that term. Even less people won't know the term Latiné. So it's kind of like, that's kind of a barrier, an issue. But in Latin America, they don't use, when they're speaking in Spanish, they don't use Latinx, they use Latiné. And they also have people who are not gender conforming. On the other side of that, you don't have to be non-gender conforming to use the term Latinx or Latiné. There are people who, as second gens, as third gens, as fourth gens, maybe they don't feel as connected to their Latin heritage. And a lot of times we're told that you're not a real this or that. And so they use the term to Latinx to identify themselves as somebody who's kind of in between, who's a little bit of both. So it's used in a variety of ways. I do try to be inclusive, and so I'll say things like Latino, Latiné, Latinx, because I do want to be inclusive of those who like feel very strong that they are Latinos, inclusive of those who are very strong that they're Latinx. And so that's why I say like all those terms. Sometimes I'll just say Latin people. And nobody's ever got mad at me for the term Latin people, you know? So yeah, those are that's the breakdown. Kind of confusing.
Well, that's what I was going to ask if like it's more of the older generation that doesn't like the term Latinx, and it's more like the younger generations that are accepting of it.
Yes and no, because I will say that I've given this lecture in person. I have yet to have a person who identifies Latinx when I've given this lecture in person. Virtually, I don't know because it's hard to gauge that. But in person, I haven't, and that's younger and older. What I'll say with the older population is they don't even know that the term is. That's like, you ask my mom, they don't know what that means. They don't know what that is. They've never heard of it. So with older population, especially, they don't know, right? Younger generation, I didn't think that it is a lot more younger generation that identifies as Latinx, but not all or even the majority of them would I say identify as Latinx. And it's interesting, you know, I went to Target for Hispanic Heritage Month. They had like a whole section, and they put Latino Heritage Month. They didn't use Latinx. And so I wonder if they are listening to some of that pushback. Because if you go online and you post anything about Latinx, oh my gosh, there is so much anger towards that term. And it's a hard position to be in, honestly. It's a hard, even for me, there's this person who I follow. He created this game called Millennial Loteria. Loteria is a game that we play. He not Americanized it. He just made it more trendy. But he said, it was funny. He did this reel where he's like, when you're like Hispanic, Latino, Latina, whatever, and you don't know, when you no longer know what to call the month, do you call it Hispanic Heritage Month? Do you call it Latino Heritage Month? Do you call it Latinx Heritage Month? Like, what do you call it? And I'm like, oh my gosh, me too, same. Like, I want to make everybody happy. I don't want anybody to feel excluded. Genuinely, I don't, including myself, right? And so he's like, I'm just going to start calling it Mi Gente Month. It's like, it's just our month. I'm like, yeah, same. I'm just going to say, so it's hard. So I think it's interesting that Target put that stance and did Latino instead of Latinx.
I'm sure Target would get hate regardless. There would be someone writing into Target.
But they make it less hate. I don't know. I'll have to research online and see if anybody says anything about that. But yeah, we tend to have, you know, I'm never home. And that's kind of sad. Because this month is the month that I wish that I was home. We do these events called Fiestas Patrias, or like patriot parties, basically. And I grew up going to them. We did them especially like at church. And I grew up I was so blessed. I didn't grow up in a like Mexican specific community. I grew up in a Latin community. And we had people from all over, from Colombia, from Cuba, from El Salvador. Oh my God, I love Salvadorian food. And I definitely think that I must be my stomach is definitely Salvadorian. Puerto Rico, I mean, people from like all Nicaragua, people from all sorts of different countries. And even sometimes we didn't have like a whole bunch of people from every country, but we had a lot of people represented in the countries where we were from, where in our church, in our community. And so Fiestas Patrias is we all have a stand. So like Mexico gets together and Mexico plans out like these dishes. And El Salvador gets together and they plan out dishes. And then we would and you sell them, you know, not like for a whole lot, but enough so that people have to pay, so now everyone's like taking all the food, right? But yeah, everybody has like their stand of food, and you go around and you get to try all the foods from the Latin American countries. And I will tell you, the people at my church, they could cook.
Yeah.
I loved going to Fiestas Patrias. It was, one of the best memories, and one of the still events that I still like. I don't manage to go to church that often, but still like the event that I choose to go to is Fiestas Patrias because it's still very much connected to like our community and our culture. And there's like community events too. There's in Mexico, they have like El Grito de la Independencia, where they will do like the president of Mexico will come out usually like the night before Independence Day, like around 11 p.m. and they'll do the grito or the scream, but it's not really a scream. I mean, they could do a variety of things, and they ring the bell, and it's a whole like there's a bunch of like festivities. Latin America, lots of festivities. Like it's like your Independence Day, like July 4th here, like that, right? But here, here in the US, yeah, like celebrating with your families. I Yeah, it's interesting. You'll have like brands, and everyone wants to celebrate Hispanic Heritage Month during this month and want to give you a highlight. Everyone wants you to speak, and that can sometimes be frustrating, right? Because we're celebrating it all year long, but it's also kind of nice, honestly, like to have this like month where you celebrate it. I'm kind of sad that it's like halfway through, and I still haven't um, I haven't been able to go to a single Fiestas Patrias. We have this event in Houston called Sweet Like Pan Dulce, which is like a market where they have like a lot of like Latin brands that come and like sell, and it's like a pretty decent size. I'm gonna go to that. Hopefully, I'm right now I'm not scheduled for anything, so I hope that I continue to not be scheduled for anything during that date. Yeah. And so like yeah, there are few events like all over the cities where with the city with like dances and festivals, and I mean, imagine likely how y'all celebrate New Year's, right? Like you have just community events. Yeah. So we have big community events, but it makes you feel special. And it reminds you to like be proactive about things. Like it reminded me like, hey, I should probably do a scholarship or I should probably do an event. So it did give me that little bit of push.
Yeah. Yeah. Is there anything like, I guess as a clinician wise, like we should expect from our patients or
Not for during Hispanic Heritage Month. I would say like if you have a Spanish speaking patient, some resources. Obviously, if you don't follow me on Instagram, I do free dental Spanish videos for people. I'm always accepting requests. If you're needing something interpreted, me to make a video of it, I will try my best. Dentalcare.com has some Spanish resources. So if you go to dentalcare.com, patient education, and then there's like another button, but you can select the language, and there's a variety of languages, not just Spanish. And then you can select like whatever, like bleeding gums, and then it'll have like PDF formats that you can print out, and it'll talk about like gingivitis or whatever it is that you're looking for. And those are completely free that you can just like hand out to your patients. Because for not all people from Latin America, but also for the patients that I serve, who tend to have like lesser education, they tend to have like a fifth grade reading level and like very low dental IQ. And so it's good to explain to them what they're getting, what their problem is or their diagnosis, but also give them like a printout of things.
I know you talked about food a lot just now with the different festivals. And I know I've heard in your lecture before you talk about the food from the different countries and the impact that can have on oral health and systemic health.
Yeah. So I would say if you're doing nutritional counseling, is that I would ask them to send you like to take a picture of what it is that they're eating, ask them what the ingredients are, and also how they prepare the food. Because like a quesadilla, what do you think a quesadilla is?
The bread, well, carbs, meat, and cheese.
Okay, but what's the carb?
No, flour. I like corn tortillas. I was like,
okay, so when you think of a quesadilla, you think of a flour tortilla with cheese and meat. When I think of quesadilla, I call that a sincronizada. What you're describing is like a flour tortilla with cheese. That to me is a sincronizada. And it's like, it's not cut, it's like a circle. And a quesadilla is corn tortilla with cheese. And yeah, sometimes they have meat. But in El Salvador, it is like a cornbread. It's, yeah.
But it's called a quesadilla.
It's called a quesadilla.
Oh.
Yeah. It's delicious. But again, like you have these terms that you identify one way, but they may mean something different.
Yeah. Because a cornbread and a flour tortilla are completely different.
Yeah, completely different. But also like even like empanadas are different. Like to you, like an empanada is probably something like hearty, but in some countries it's something sweet. Like they have like sweet fillings. So I think it's just, we are similar in a lot of ways, but different in a lot of ways as well. And so I think asking them for pictures and asking them how things are prepared, because like, do we eat some things? Not everything that we eat is bad. Like we eat picadillo, which for us is like ground beef with, sometimes vegetables, but like, or potatoes and corn. So it's not like unhealthy, right? You can give them options to, hey, maybe change out the oil for olive oil instead of, corn oil. Tell them, hey, maybe add some spinach in there. Corn tortillas aren't necessarily bad for you, right? Flour tortilla is probably not the best for you, right? But there are some things in our communities that are good. So like beans are good for you. Beans have protein, right? But maybe don't fry the beans, right? Like we do, like if you're doing refried, maybe like don't refry the beans, or if you're going to refry them, maybe do it in olive oil. And so, yeah, I mean, I think focus on the good, and not always the bad. Um, I would also say like, no, like I know there's a lot of shame associated with soda. We do lack the ability to identify sugar. Like we struggle with identifying sugar. In some parts of Latin America, soda is more accessible than water is. And so, and it's also very much a cultural thing. When people would come over, hey niña, go, ve y compra los refrescos, like go and buy the sodas. But I always tell this joke, but it's true. My dad's diabetic and I told his blood sugar and I was like, why this is, why it's so high? It's because you drink a soda. He's like, no, I drink a Fanta.
Yeah.
And I'm like, same thing, right? Same thing. And so they don't realize like it's not a Coke, so it doesn't, it still has sugar in it, right? So they struggle in like identifying sugar, right? And knowing that like, hey, tortillas also have sugar. It's a carb, right? So they maybe struggle with some of those things. And so educating them in a way that gives them grace. But there are things that are good for them. Like, we eat fruits and vegetables. A lot of people talk about tajin. Tajin is no sugar. It does have some sodium in it though. There is a sugar-free chamoy if they like that chili stuff. There are options out there. So giving them, not just trying to take away the entirety of their culture, because then you're not gonna be able to change. I mean, I think you and I are very similar in, maybe not super similar in our eating habits, but in some ways very similar in like we at home eat a lot either Vietnamese food or Mexican food. Like those are the things that we eat and very much comfort for us.
Yeah.
And when I go on vacation, like when we were in Iceland, at the end we found this pho restaurant. I was like, oh my God, it feels like home. I felt like I don't know. It just feels, there's like comfort in it, right? And as much as I like trying new foods, I also want to feel comfortable. And so you can't just give it all up. And so finding alternative ways that you could advise them to incorporate maybe more fruits and more vegetables into their diet without completely changing things. And masa is like nutritious as well. It can be. It depends how they're preparing things. Sometimes if we're sticking the whole thing of lard in there, maybe not.
Yeah.
maybe not. But, and also, I mean, there's like some stereotypes to things like, there aren't burritos where I'm from. Burritos, I think, is like, and maybe some parts of Mexico, but in my part in Mexico, there's no burritos. Or like, queso, like dipping queso. That's not a thing.
It's like Tex-Mex.
Yeah, it's like Tex-Mex. And so like in my part of Mexico where we're from, electricity is really not that strong and it's hard. And so you don't really we have powdered milk that you drink as adults. Yeah, you mix it. So even it's, like baby formula, it's like that, but for adults. Because the refrigerators they're not strong enough power-wise to keep cool milk. And like, where would you buy the milk, honestly? But same thing with cheese. It's a very different type of cheese. It's not mozzarella cheese like what you would have here. It's queso fresco. Yeah, it's different.
So when you're talking about the powdered milk, that brings me up to, I remember there were some patients I would see where they would be on Nido.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And then it was either like their doctor put them on it, but then, because I guess, and you can correct me, like it had certain nutrients if they had trouble gaining weight. So they would take that. But then they would just continue on, but it needed to
be off of that. Yeah. Nido is definitely what we drink. Those things. I think the other thing is like we fail to identify sugar. We have a hard time identifying like healthy food sometimes. We struggle so sometimes I think like maybe bland is healthy. So like white rice, but white rice isn't necessarily healthy, right?
No, yeah.
And that's because we're so used to like sazonando everything, like putting seasoning on everything. We tend to do eat like acidic. Actually, I was on Instagram the other day and there was a video with me and Brush with Britt where we cheers with a Coke. And somebody like called me out for drinking a soda, but that's very much a cultural thing. I don't have Coke every day. And okay, look, I was gonna buy the mini one, but they were sold out of the mini one. Okay, so in my defense, they were sold out of the mini ones. I drank like a few sips and then I threw it away. But also we had worked all day in the sun, and then Angela made us walk 30 minutes, okay, to go to the
I didn't buy
Coca-Cola and M&M store, and I was about to pass out. for those who don't know, most of you don't know, I have a back defect. And I was like getting back spasms, and I was just like really struggling. And Britt's like, "Oh, let's get you a Coke," and I was like, "Okay, yeah, sounds good." Before it ever passes out here.
Well, I think there's nothing. Okay, I think with patients,
But everybody else has drinks and their sugar in their wine.
yeah, I think like with patients, like yes, we want to advise them, what's right and wrong, but also sometimes you can't change some of the habits, so you need to give them like more modifications than completely taking it away. So it's like, okay, you can have your candy, just you need to brush and floss afterwards, or just finding some way to do it, or
like a balance, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Like, I like my coffee, but I, try to drink it with meals, or I rinse with water or drink water afterwards or something.
I do think that, part of my problem with food is because I grew up not having readable access to all the foods. And so when I ended up having money, I indulge. And my dad is the same way. My dad grew up in poverty, and my dad grew up not having access to food, and never begging for food, but sometimes bartering for food, like doing work for food. As a young boy, at like 8 years old, having to barter for food. And so he knows what it's like to be hungry. I don't know what it's like to be hungry, because we always had food, maybe not like we had WIC food, we had like the yellow block cheese and stuff. We had those things. So we always had food, but we didn't always have like, I couldn't have just gone to the store and buy a Snickers bar, or chips. I remember like I didn't have chips, like American chips, till like I was older, and I was like, oh my God, I want to try everything, because I didn't have those experiences. And so my dad's kind of the same way, in the sense that he says he always wants to buy food for everybody. He always wants to like have food around. And it's just kind of like this trauma response to, being in poverty and not having access to food. And it's very much a mental thing. It's not like it's a trauma thing. Like that has impacted his relationship with food.
It's gonna, you say trauma, at the same time I was thinking also maybe that's his way of showing love, because like he knows how important it is.
Yeah.
And buying people food, making sure people have food, like that's his way of showing love.
And he said before, like, he's like, when other people don't, he's like, I always want to bring food for everybody, even if they have money, they have resources. I would just feel like we have to feed everybody, we have to give everybody food. It's in him. But same thing for him, like he doesn't know necessarily, like he suffers with like when to stop eating, and that contributes to his health and diabetes. And so yes, giving grace, also teaching them, right, that diabetes and the impact that diabetes has on your oral health, but also on your entire body. My dad having diabetes, and my dad's eating habits led to him getting fatty liver disease, and that led to cirrhosis of my dad's liver. Those things are connected. Diabetes and fatty liver are connected, and then that can lead to cirrhosis. Those things are connected, and then my dad ended up developing hepatocellular carcinoma, or liver cancer, because of his relationship with food. And so there is an impact on your entire body. And I do think that we have a place to be able to talk to our patients about those things. If you're allowed to in your state, maybe doing blood glucose testing and talking to them about like, hey, we took your blood sugar today, and man, it's high, and this is what this means. A lot of times they don't know what it means to be diabetic. They know that they are, but what are the consequences of it? But if anybody's interested in learning about caring for the Latin community, I'm going to be teaching a virtual course in October, so it'll be in my stories. Y'all can check it out when it comes out. If not, if you want something on demand, you can go on dentalcare.com. And dentalcare.com currently, on the first page, I think it's on there, is a 1-hour CE course where I'm talking about caring for the Latin community. And I go through a variety of things about like the impacts of oral health, about disparities, like why do you care about this? Why, maybe you're like, I don't care about culturally competent care, but maybe you care about case acceptance. And there's a huge factor that culturally competent care leads to case acceptance and then making money for your business. And so if anybody's interested in that, it's available online completely for free. Oh, and one last thing. If you're looking for a children's book in Spanish, I have a children's book. It's called Smiles por Vida. It's available on Amazon. If you buy a book, $2 of that goes to us to be able to buy more books to give out to the community. So we don't make profit from the books. We actually use that money to give back. So if you're looking for a Spanglish/Spanish digital children's book, you can find that on Amazon. and the book's name is Smiles por Vida.
Well, thank you so much, Amber, for educating us on Hispanic Heritage Month, and we will follow you so that way we can know what to apply for these scholarships, resources for dentalcare.com, your upcoming CE, and the free mentorship on October 15th. So follow the Latina RDH on Instagram. See you next week.
Thank you for listening to Positively Hygiene.
Join us every Tuesday for a new episode.
Don't forget to follow us on Instagram for the opportunity for how you can contribute to our podcast.
And follow and review Positively Hygiene on Apple and Spotify podcast.